All right, we're going to go ahead and begin, and welcome to May 3rd, 2022. It is 7 o'clock for our caucus meeting. Some announcements to start out with. I'm super excited to announce or to recognize Mrs. Christine Matosh, who's going to talk briefly about our Susquenita Blackhawk cyber program, some rebranding, and some recognition, and some things we're doing currently with our program. So without further ado, Mrs. Matosh.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. So tonight, like Dr. Fox said, I'm going to discuss a little bit about our cyber program. First, we do have a new name for our program. It was Susquenita Blended Cyber Program. We wanted to change the name to try to encompass not just the learning at home, but everything that we're doing in the school with the online learning. So we reached out to our cyber teachers and administrators, and we came up with Susquenita Blackhawk Academy. So that's the first change of our rebranding. Next, as you know, we had a contest for a new cyber logo with our art students at the high school, and Emma Lanning was the winning artist. This was her initial design that she submitted to art class, and during the process, Mrs. Troutman and I went and talked to her about, some changes that she could make, and Mrs. Hunter as well, talked to her, as we're using it for a logo, we kind of need it to be a little bit more not so busy with everything around it just because it's going to be in print. So we talked to her about some changes, and she came up with this second option, which is the next photo there. That was her second round. We talked a little bit more, and not yet. She also another part of it was the tagline. So when we went to the students, we had a tagline with a program, but we told them that they could change the tagline. If they wanted the logo that they designed they thought fit better with a new tagline, that would be something that they could do. Emma wanted a new tagline. She wanted to come up with a logo and the tagline. So her tagline was taking Blackhawk Learning Beyond the Nest. We shortened it because we changed it to Susquenita Blackhawk Academy. We changed it to Taking Learning Beyond the Nest. And then after she had her logo, we sent it to Hot Frog, and they digitized it. So she did paper and pencil drawing. She didn't want to do anything. She wanted it on paper and pencil. So Hot Frog was able to take her design, digitize it, so we're able to use it now online. We can use it to print different things. We actually have two separate logos, one with the icons on the computer screen. That one has a lot of colors, and when you're printing things on t-shirts or other kind of material, it costs a lot more with all those different colors. So we also went with one without the logos, the icons on there, and then just more of a plain one that we'll be able to use on t-shirts. That one's that one. And then just putting it all together, this is the final product, the Susquenita Blackhawk Academy, Taking Learning Beyond the Nest. And we do have a printed copy for Emma to her, and a certificate that Mr. Funk will give to her one day this week. We'll get some pictures and put them out on Facebook. I did email her. It is on our cyber website, so on the website on the cyber school page, so it's there. It has attributed to her. Our plan is to look for sponsors. We reached out to a couple different people, organizations, to have t-shirts created. We're looking at a t-shirt with a logo on the front to give to all of our current cyber students, and then any cyber students that come into the program. We're also looking at, I don't have one, but a water bottle sticker. That's kind of the thing on water bottles right now. Making some water bottle stickers, handing those out to our cyber students. We're going to advertise our cyber program on the digital sign in Marysville. So we have 2 weeks over the summer. We're going to use this as the focal point so we can try to get some of our students back into our cyber program. We're also on Monday, August 1st, going to have a cyber cookout. So we're going to invite all of the current cyber students, and more importantly, the cyber students at outside cyber schools, their families, to come so we can talk about our program and what we have to offer. And then hopefully our current cyber students will also be able to tell them, you know, the positives of our program. Did I miss anything, Dr. Fox?
No, not at all. I think you did a great job of looking over and explaining the comprehensive changes. And again, doing so in a fiscally responsible manner, you know, unlike some of our counterparts in cyber charter schools that spend over $600,000 for air balloons in parades, we certainly do not do that. But yet, we believe we have a program that can be personalized, that can be flexible for students, and can fit the needs of our students as well, and still continue down that path, which the path we want to is to allow for that flexibility. And hence the idea of Susquenita Black Hawk Academy, because it doesn't just have to be all cyber. It could be a blended model between different experiences. And once you're a Black Hawk student, you're a Black Hawk student. You have the full array of different activities that are associated with that, including our dances, our proms, homecoming, as well as all the athletics and extracurricular activities that students have the opportunity to participate in. So please check us out. Yes, sir.
Question, what is Hot Frog?
Hot Frog is a media provider that will produce anything from what you saw, taking something static to make it digital. They'll do T-shirts, mugs.
Our business cards, I think we get printed
Yeah.
there. So a printing company.
Are they local or?
They're in Mechanicsburg.
But it was Perry County Printing.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Matosh, and thank you, Emma, for the design and a great collaborative project as well that we'd like to, and we'll continue to do more of those collaborative projects and getting the feedback from our teachers as well as we look at those continuous improvements. So be on the lookout, anybody who's in our current Black Hawk Academy, and to those who are in cyber programs within our district. We'll be sending some information out, and we want you to join us for our cookout and our closer look for you to kind of get a chance to ask us as many questions and get familiarized with our programs. So thank you. Taking a look at some personnel items for our upcoming May 10th regular board meeting. We have, unfortunately, a couple of resignations on the docket. We have Mrs. Erfley from the position of kindergarten teacher. I think she's relocating to another area of the Commonwealth, and I believe she is, if it's okay to say, I believe she's getting married, and we're super excited for her, and she's done an outstanding job here at Susquenita School District. She will greatly be missed, but we're very excited for Ms. Erfley and the way, certainly the direction of her life, and wish her all the very best. Unfortunately, Mrs. Brittany Block is leaving the position of school counselor at the end of this year as well. She's taken a position that's a lot closer to her own family residence and really kind of closed down her commute time a lot. And we wish her the best as well as she transitions to a new school district as well. And following that same note of closing the commute time, Miss Katie Wolfgang has done a tremendous job for us in 1 year in the position of speech and language teacher, and she was driving close to an hour and has really closed her drive time as well, being a lot closer to home. So we wish her the best, and certainly are going to miss her as well. So we've got some major openings, so if anybody's listening in the community, we will be posting for school counselor and as well as speech and language teacher. So take a look. Those positions will be posted on our employment website. So we encourage you to take a look at that. We're anticipating some employment being added as we finalize some interviews for this week, and we're hoping to get some employments being added to May 10th as well. So we've been busy doing those as well. And a big shout out to Ms. Miller, our coordinator of human resources, for all of her coordination and really putting a nice process in place for ongoing employment interviews, scheduling, reference checks, and all that is human resources. Very busy time for her. Leave of absence for Christine Gisweski for FMLA leave for the end of this school year, or it appears to be next school year until November the 7th. Successful completion of a 90-day evaluations for Rebecca Barrick and Cameron West and Miranda Long as custodians. They've done a great job, and we are thankful for their service and thankful for all that they've done. Substitute professional staff. We're excited that Mr. Shambaugh, Denny, is going to be added to the substitute list at the end of this year for beginning of next year. And
We knew he couldn't stay away.
and you know what? I love every minute of it because he is a great part of our school district. And personally, I think I can speak for Craig as well. A day that we can see Denny's smile and his enthusiasm. And I hope that after 42 years in education, I have that same committed passion that he has day in and day out, because to take that would be a huge, if we all had that, we would all be in really good shape. So I'm excited for that and excited to have him. So for all of our retirees, thank you, and come back and follow in Mr. Shambaugh and Mr. Ziegler's footsteps as substitutes. We definitely could use you. Athletic coaches and volunteers for the fall of 2022 season. Here we go. We have approximately, well, it's in alphabetical order, so I won't try to guesstimate how many are there. We have a listing of head coaches, assistant coaches, varsity coaches, and JV coaches for all of our complement of fall sports, happening from middle school girls basketball, cross country, field hockey, football, soccer, girls soccer, and cheerleading. We have volunteer coaches as well, and I'd just like to point out volunteer cross-country maintenance, Mr. Rick Knepp, as well as several for football as well, and some summer camp teachers. We know we want to begin our summer camp experiences this summer, and we have the Early Birds kindergarten, pre-kindergarten program, which is going to be exciting for those who are registered in kindergarten. They get a chance to experience a little bit about what the school day is going to look like, and use that day to transition in, have some literacy skills and some take-homes for them during that time. So we have some teachers listed here as well that are volunteering their time, but yes, getting paid a stipend to be able to do that through our ESSER 7% funds. But really, the amount of time that they put in, they are truly volunteering their time for that, and we're thankful that they are committing, which will allow us to run this program. And that completes our resignation leaves, transfers, and employments to date for, excuse me, for the May 10th school board meeting. Going into agenda items, we have our approval of our minutes. Excited for our student representative reports, and unfortunately, it is Cadence Latshaw's last board report. So we'll try to do our best to make that one special and give her a little bit of an extra hard time. No, just kidding. But we'll make it special and recognize her on Tuesday as well for all the time that she's put in. And it's hard to believe. I feel like she just started, and she's done a great job. We have a President's Project. This President's Project is a inter-district collaboration between high school teacher Mr. Shepler and elementary teacher Mrs. Book, and they're going to come together and explain what project that they worked on and what that experience was for not just the students in their classes, but the students throughout the elementary school. And it was a really exciting project, so we're excited to have them come and display and showcase their learning and growing and what they've done for the students. We'll get into finance here in just a little bit. The big item on the agenda is our proposed general fund budget. So we have that looking at for May 10th. Remember, the general fund budget is just a proposal, and by the process of moving forward according to school code, we need to approve our general fund budget, and then it sits for 28 days. And then after, we will look at our June meeting for formal and final approval of that, at which time then it gets posted and signed off. We have election of board treasurer that's coming up here on May 10th as well. Direct depository to appoint Mid-Penn Bank as our direct depository, as well as meal prices. And I want to talk about that just for 1 second. We need to do our meal prices approval Last school year, of course, the meal prices were zero due to the flexibility waiver from the United States Department of Agriculture and the federal government. And unfortunately, what we're hearing right now is that flexibility waiver from USDA is not happening at this current time for next school year. So at that point, we will need to approve our lunch prices and get ready. In an event that that changes, we could certainly make a change and go back to zero, but we need to be ready for next school year, and we'll communicate that out. There's also on the agenda American Fidelity Agreement. There's a motion to approve and adopt this agreement for a Section 125 flexible fringe benefits plan. So within our collective bargaining agreement in our Act 93, there is the ability that employees can engage in a flexible 125 savings plan. So basically this agreement is through American Fidelity, which allows us to offer that requirement under this particular plan. And previously we haven't had that available, and it is something that we need to have available to all employees if they so choose to have it. Fund custodians for student fiduciary accounts, that is our principals at every building, as well as looking at contracts, which is approval for Trout. Here we go. We just finished up. Now we're getting ready for round 2 for our next fiscal audit, which will be for the 21-22 school year, or fiscal year 22, and it's a placeholder for Trout CPA to be our auditing firm and to see what adjustments that we can make and improvements we can make on that process for next school year. This is something Dr. Herman will speak about this evening and give a little bit of overview, which is our capital intermediate unit contract. It is important to note that that contract is for a fee of $910,371.63. That is an increase of $369,576.15. And I won't steal the thunder, but a lot of that is there's an increase in price of IU services, but most importantly, there's an increase in the placements of students and the needs of students. And Dr. Herman will go into that a little bit and give a presentation, because we thought it was noteworthy when there's an increase of that magnitude to be able to explain a little bit of the why behind why that increase is such. Secondly, is a WorkNet of Mechanicsburg. We use WorkNet for our physicals, including the PPD test that is required for all new hires at a rate of $80.65, and that's about an $8.15 increase from last year, which is still reasonable considering increases in price. And the last one is our Nutrition Inc. To serve as our district's food service management company for 22-23 school year. We've been happy with Nutrition Inc. and happy with the services that they provided to us in the district. We may also have a copier proposal on here as well with Marco. We've been happy with Marco and the service that they provided to us and the pricing structure under the CoStars agreement. And we are finalizing an agreement with Rorabus for an additional 5 years, but we're still working out the details of that. We will have a Blackhawk Foundation update, as well as some administrator reports. Any questions on agenda items for the May 10th board meeting coming up Tuesday? All right, hearing none, I'm going to turn over the microphone for review of finances to Mr. Pete Bard.
Thank you, everybody. Did you guys get the PDF documents that were emailed out to you by Mrs. Balsbaugh this morning? Okay. I'll start by reviewing the revenue for 2022. Currently, we have received 95, or a little close to 96% of our local revenue that was budgeted for. So we're on pace to exceed 100% of the local effort revenue, and that's driven primarily by our local real estate transfer taxes, which means that the real estate market is pretty hot in our district, and so I'm pretty happy with that, and I think the board should be pretty happy with that as well. Our local real estate taxes were fully collected at around 104%. So that means we budgeted over. They were relatively under budget. They were under budgeted, which is good, and that means you were over collected what the revenue was, what was collected, and nothing really has changed from those reports that came in from when Mr. Medina was talking about it. I know some people had some questions about the state revenue coming in at 65% of what the budget amount is. That is to be expected. The state usually trues up around at the end of June, so I would expect a big payment from the state to come in around June 30th, and that usually gets the districts to float the districts through the summer months until the real estate taxes start coming in. So the 65.21% of the state revenue is something that is to be expected, and I'm not troubled by any of that in that report. I'm not troubled by any of the revenue report at all, as we've received $26 million of a $32 million revenue budget, which is 80%, or a little over 80% of what we budgeted for, and so that is a pretty strong revenue collection. I'm estimating we get a little over 100% of the estimated revenue, so we should end up around $33 million of our budgeted revenue, and so I'm pretty comfortable with that. Moving on to the expense report, the summary expense report shows that we're 75% expended. So we've spent $26 million of a $35.4 million budget. I know I'm expecting the district to come in around $2.5 million of a $2.8 million to $3 million deficit. So I do expect us to come in under what the district budgeted for. That is within what the Susquenita School District has historically performed at, which is very good news. I've been here for about a month, and I will say, out of the districts that I've worked at or have been at, this district and this community is one of the best at maintaining their fiscal house, and I'm just overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed at how well that the boards in the past and this current board has just kept their fiscal house under control to maintain such a strong fund balance in ways that many school districts in the Commonwealth simply cannot do, and simply maybe will not do or won't do. If you look at the way the state has unfunded mandates, especially the big one, which is the cyber charter schools, if you remove that albatross from around your necks, you guys would have a balanced budget and would not have to have any financial stresses that you guys have. So being 75% or a little 76% expended at this point of the year is not terrible. When you get a little bit deeper into the expense report, you look at the salaries and the salary and wages, you're at 69% expended with about 4 payrolls left. So that's pretty well expected. I do want to point out that the teacher salaries, the teachers' payroll does extend into July and August. So their salaries will hit an accrual basis. As you know, the school districts are counting for what they call an accrual basis. Even though the fiscal year ends on June 30th, expenses can be accrued for 60 days beyond that. So can revenue. The 12-month employees and the 10-month employees, their expenses end and begin on the fiscal year end date. So any of the 12-month employees, our expenses begin on July 1st. But the teachers do not. They will hit they have 4 more payrolls in July and August that will hit in these expense categories. I've forecasted this out, so I'm expecting this to hit around 97%. And with the open positions that we have, that's to be expected. That's around 100%. So I believe that we are fairly and adequately producing what we have expected this to be. And looking through some of the other expenses, there was nothing that was out of the ordinary, no extraordinary expenses. There are some special education expenses that Dr. Herman will talk about that do have some concerns, but they do fit within the 3% margin of error, so to speak, in the budget, even though some of these numbers do look a little bit higher than the overexpended marks. We have completed the accounting. Ken Medina, before he had departed, has completed the reaccounting and the restructuring of the account codes. So these should look a lot cleaner next year moving forward, and I think he has mentioned that. And just so you guys are aware, when Dr. Herman does talk about when he goes to his presentation, the increase that he will mention in the capital IU's contract is accounted for in the budget that was prepared and is scheduled to be voted on by the board at that particular moment in time. I know there's been also a question as to when the district will go broke. Broke is not really a term that school districts or public entities use, but the district will experience financial distress in about 3.5 years, given the trajectory that the district is on at this particular moment. And financial distress is when the fund balance dips into what I call, we have about 1.5 months left of cash on hand when it comes to in the summer, when the summer months hit. And that comes, what I would do in that situation is I would ask the board to take out a tax anticipation note of about 1.5 months or 2 months worth of expenses in the summertime to make payroll and pay bills while we wait for real estate taxes to come in. I've had to do that in my past district. Usually the interest rates, sometimes it costs the district about 20 or 30 grand in interest to do that. So it's not something we want to get into. Dr. Fox and I are working on a long-term plan to avoid that, and we will be sharing that with you guys in the upcoming months. But excuse me, as we move along in this process, we are in a very stable. Right now, we're in a very stable format right now with the fund balance you guys have, and I want to thank you guys as a community coming, because the board members come from the community, and the community that really decides what the district can do and what the district can do without. The buildings are in clean and in moderately good condition, but that is going to need some addressing as well. So we have plans in place to discuss all these things, and I think with proper planning, I'm confident that we could avoid being in that position. But without the state, with the fact that the state has levied unfunded mandates on the district to be in this position that you guys are in is a true testament to foresight on your guys' part that just quite frankly, out of the 500 districts, not many, if any, have. So you guys should be, and I hope the community is watching, because I think the community should be proud of that effort that this community has put forth over the last 10, 15 years. So I don't know if you guys have any questions. And the two reports you have are a comparable 2021 and 2022 comparable reports. That's all I have, so hopefully I didn't talk too long.
Thank you, Mr. Bard. Any questions for Mr. Bard at this time?
I just had a comment. This is, I think this is close to being exactly what our board has been asking for years and have not had. So even I can understand it, I think. So it's, thank you very much. And I assume this will be like a monthly something
Right.
that we will get.
Mr.
So
Medina had
this
left,
is really.
I can't take the credit for this. Mr. Medina had built these. So it was Mr. Medina's foresight, Dr. Fox's foresight to get these done. I'm just going to continue moving forward with these on a monthly basis and to explain these on a monthly basis.
It's just great, and I appreciate it, and your explanations are very clear and succinct as well, so thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Now we'll turn it over to Dr. Herman, who's going to talk a little bit about the increase in the CEIU contract, as well as transition into having some fun with our special education comprehensive plan. We did an overall district comprehensive plan, and in accordance, there's a subcategory in plan that sometimes mirrors in terms of the dates, and unfortunately sometimes doesn't. But nevertheless, he was charged with coming on board relatively soon and getting together and spearheading and leading a comprehensive special education plan, and I think he's done so very well. And as we continue to look at improvements and changes, we have a great group of dedicated special education teachers, a great group of dedicated paraprofessionals, and an outstanding support staff that make up our special education team, and time again. And once, again, I don't want to steal the thunder, but special education is not something. It's a part of our regular education as well. So it's a team approach, and our regular education teachers are a huge component and a part of this as well, as we all work together to ensure that a student gets what they need, and we meet that student where they're at, and we grow that student. And that's important. Dr. Herman?
Thank you. So yeah, as kind of already was discussed a little bit as an introduction there, the CAIU We contract with them for specific services based on student need, and at times that is unpredictable. At times it's abrupt. You know, it could be a student that moves into our district that has a particular set of needs and a particular set of services that are attached to that student just coming in. And sometimes the student's needs just change as they get older and develop. So there are several variables, I think, that are contributing to the CAIU increase. And one is the obvious anticipated 4% increase in all services. No matter what we were getting there, it was anticipated to be a blanket 4%. Specifically, like was mentioned, we do have 2 students at a classroom operated by the CAIU that are 2 additional than last year at this time. So when you would have approved the CAIU budget last year at this time, there's 2 additional students. And the base tuition cost on average, it depends on the student's placement, but like the type of service that the student receives. But the average base tuition cost for those students is $55,000 each, and then that does not include any related services that are needed for that student. So if the student has a unique set of needs that require a variety of related services, you're adding those on top of the base tuition of $55,000. And so that next bullet point there is an example. We do have one student whose related services had a large increase. And that's based on IEP team decisions when that student's annual IEP comes up, or as needs come up, and the IU and the district are charged with responding to those changes of the student's experience. And so that one student does have a costly related service bundle, but again, it's in response to that student's needs, and so we have that responsibility to ensure that he's accessing the education in the way that he needs to. And then there's just some other minor pieces to this. So there was a previously unbudgeted but used service, and we're anticipating using that service again in the 22-23 school year. That's at about $23,000. And then there's just historically services that we've used, but I think were coded differently in the past.
Question, how could it be previously unbudgeted but historically used service?
So essentially, we used the service and we paid for the service, but it wasn't necessarily a line item that we could attach that to, if that makes sense. So students have certain needs, and we appropriately responded to that in years past with those services. It's just that we didn't label it anything specifically in the line items of the special education budget.
Okay.
It wasn't included, yeah, under the special education umbrella. It could have been pulled from a different area and cost. And therefore, when we look at where these funding sources and codes go to, it was misaligned and needed to be realigned where it should be.
So if our special ed census number of kids go up, does our state reimbursement go up with that as well, since there's more kids, or not?
Not exactly. Yeah.
Explain how that works. Thank you.
Yes, when we do jump over to the other presentation about the special education plan, I'll be able to talk about our census and stuff. But right now, the students that are receiving services from the CAIU are students that have been getting services forever, that they've been with us, right? These are pretty significant needs. These are pretty unique needs, and sometimes complex in the sense of there's multiple things going on comorbidly, and we have to respond. Their, per student money is the same no matter how complex their needs are going to get, right? Now, there are fiscal options that I don't necessarily think we explored in the past, and we have now. So an example of that would be contingency funds, which is also called C funds. We did apply for that this year. We just received the letter that we were rejected. Any funding for that. Our student was about, what, 20,000, 30? Yeah.
I don't want to hijack, but so we applied for contingency funds. How the contingency fund plan works is the state goes from the most expensive application down, and the cutoff for funding was $118,000 per student, and our student was at $87,000 this year. So we missed the cutoff for funding this year. But every year we're going to apply and see what we get.
And I would like to thank Mr. Bard for reaching out, and I'd like to also thank the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the Bureau of Special Education for their quick response to help us understand that gives us that kind of that mechanism as to why, and it helps us kind of understand a little bit, you know, in terms of that too. But that is a funding source to help that we will continue to apply for to see what that rolling threshold is per year. Thank you.
And then this doesn't pertain to the CAIU contract, but there are things called approved private schools, or APSs, and APSs are designated a certain number of what's called 40-10 slots. 40-10 slots come with a significant fiscal benefit to a district. I've had some strong communication with one of our APSs that has one of our students. We are really trying to get a 40-10 slot. We just aren't successful yet in getting that, but we're working on negotiating that out a little more. Any questions about the CAIU one before we jump over to the special ed plan?
No, and I appreciate this overview as well. And I think the most important takeaway is, once again, we provide FAPE, a free and appropriate public education. And that is our charge, and we do so to the best of our ability. And we do not put a price tag on that charge. We do what's in the best interest, and it's a team decision. And I think that's a huge thing to emphasize, too. It's not just a singular individual, but a team decision. And sometimes the placement is short, and sometimes the placement can be long, depending upon the needs and the team decision, an IEP team decision, based upon the needs of a student. So we are thankful to have the CAIU as our supporting intermediate unit, and they do a great job in providing, and they do a great job of being responsive also. And I know Dr. Herman spends countless hours working with them and talking with them and ensuring the transitional success of our students to and from. Thank you.
Okay. So then I'm going to do just a quick overview here of the special education plan. It's a pretty long document, which will end up getting posted publicly as well for a month. But so in terms of the census, now we just need to recognize this is a very fast snapshot at one moment in time, right around December 1. So at that point in time, we had 320 students receiving services. We are up from that now. So just 5 months later, we are higher than that already. But at that snapshot in time, we were at 18.7%, which is higher than we were the year previous and higher than state average. So we are higher overall than the state average of all of our students that receive services. And then if you look at the disability categories, there are 13. We're higher than the state average for students identified with emotional disturbance and speech and language impairment.
How much higher are we in the emotional disturbance? A lot above the average?
Yes, about 3%.
Okay.
And about 5% for speech and language impairment. So the steering committee, we had a variety of stakeholders. When the state gave us the extension, we took that opportunity to add more stakeholders and hold a second planning meeting where we were able to glean a lot of important information from a variety of stakeholders. We had the administrators, we had counselors, we had regular ed teachers, we had special ed teachers, we had a parent, we had a lot of people. And we worked through a few sets of questions, and one of those will be important coming up here in a couple slides in terms of actually the next slide. So could you go to the next slide? Thank you, Christine. This slide is about the indicators and areas that we need to focus on for improvement in planning. So that first line there, we were good. We were not flagged on any of those indicators. We were flagged for one indicator, and that was indicator 5, which is educational environments. So there are a set of questions attached to that we needed to describe how we are figuring out those educational environments for students. The steering committee worked through all of those questions. We got a lot of good insight that we were able to incorporate into the special education plan. And this has historically been and continues to be an area of improvement for the district. Dr. Fox and I did meet with our special education advisor last week, I think it was, and discussed our response to that moving through the 22-23 school year.
What is the problem with our educational environments?
So we, there are 4 categories essentially. So it's 80% or higher included in regular education, between 79 and 40%, lower than 40%, and then separate facilities, so the students that are going out to placements. The particular one that we need to focus on for 22-23 are the amount of students included in regular education for 80% or more of their day. So right now, theoretically, students are spending a little more time in special education environments or restricted environments.
Okay.
Sorry. So are you talking about itinerant versus supplemental, that type of thing?
Yeah.
And so is the state telling us we should have, of our percent, so many should be supplemental, so many should be itinerant?
Not necessarily like a proportion, but just that we need to be higher. So it basically compares our number of students, 80% or higher, to the state average. And we are, quote, worse than the state average. So they're saying you need to respond by telling us how you're going to improve the amount of students that are going into the environment for 80% or more. The other 3 areas of the educational environment were fine. It's just that one subpart that we're working on.
I get it. It just,
Yeah.
it seems so counter to why you have an individual education plan. Because it's based on the needs of the student. So we can't just throw more students,
Right.
reduce their services because the
Right.
state says it should be a certain percent. I hear
But
you,
we do this. Sorry, we'll talk about this in a couple slides. But we do have some really good responses to that coming up here at the middle school for next year. So we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. But I think that is going to be a huge help as we move forward.
And if you tell them to get us more educational assistants, then we would gladly put more students in regular ed classrooms.
Right.
Absolutely. And
Sorry.
I think you make some great points, but I think there's certainly some things we can do in terms of being able to work with because each individual student is individual, and I think that's a key term as well too. And certainly it ebb and flows at different points as well during IEP team meetings, and what's in the basis and the needs of that student. So sometimes that ebb and flow is all about in a school year, starting maybe at A, then going to B, and then back to C, depending on the needs of the student and what might be occurring during the course of that time as a response to that student's needs.
Mm-hmm. The next piece of the plan is we have to so there are 13 categories. The state cares on how we identify one of them, which is the specific learning disability. There are 2 choices. One is the discrepancy model, and one is a state-approved MTSS model. We do not have a state-approved MTSS model to identify specific learning disability. That is not to say that's not, the elementary school does have an MTSS system. It is just not the same. We're not talking apples and apples there. They're just 2 separate entities at this point. It's not to say that over time that program evolves into a state-approved MTSS model as from the special education lens. So we do identify students for specific learning disability through the discrepancy model. The next slide, please. We were not flagged in any area of significant disproportionality, which is a really good thing to be in. The next slide, please. Non-resident and incarcerated students oversight. So we don't have a 1306 facility or an adult correctional facility that houses juveniles in our geographic boundary. So we don't have to worry about this. And then, of course, if we become aware of students, we're obviously going to work cooperatively with the stakeholders to make sure that everything is appropriate for those students. These were the questions that the steering committee worked through for the least restrictive environment so that we could ensure that we're all on the same page in terms of how we want to respond to this educational environment corrective action. So we did get a lot of good feedback from the team. All of it is written up into more of a paragraph form kind of thing in the special education plan. So I didn't really want to read all that to you because it was a little lengthy, but just knowing that the steering committee did help inform that decision making, and like I said, I think we do have a good plan moving forward. And this should really be our focus for the life of the special ed plan. So we'll focus on that and we'll keep correcting that.
I have a question about the fourth one there. You want to go back? And I'll read this aloud. Describe the district's procedures which ensure to maximum extent appropriate children with disabilities placed in private institutions are educated with non-disabled children. Now, how can that be? If they're being placed in a private institution with a disability, how are they going to have education with non-disabled children?
Yeah, so there are a couple opportunities. So if our students are at a private institution, but they take like community-based experiences, the time that they're in the community counts as time that they're with non-disabled peers. Same for our life skills classroom here on campus. When they go out in the community, that is, quote, regular education time. Another one would be that sometimes these private institutions take both non-exceptional and exceptional students. So we could be sending an exceptional student, a student with special education services, but the next district is sending a regular education non-exceptional student to the same private facility, and they might have times that they overlap in their day.
Okay.
We have to write up, obviously, about our positive behavior support. So we have the board policy 113.2. We have the school-wide PBIS down at the elementary school. The middle school is working on their school-wide PBIS for next year. And we also have a lot of staff district-wide trained in the de-escalation of SEM trainings, and they're regularly kept up with their certifications. So that all was good to write in. And I'm sorry, I keep going out with this mic. Intensive interagency. So this is when we are fearful that a student is going to go 30 days without the appropriate provision of services, and we could call upon the state to help us with that. We also contract with the CAIU for any students that would need a placement option called instruction conducted in the home. That is the most restrictive placement that a special education IEP team can choose upon if it's, the data are supporting that and the team agrees upon that. And if we get there, we need to contract with the CAIU at this point due to capacity, and so we are doing that. I will say that I am participating in intensive interagency for some of our students right now, not because we're worried about a 30-day lapse of service, but because of the complexity of the services that are needing to be provided for those students. So our profile in-house, which just means on campus here, okay, we have 2 school psychologists, we have 1 occupational therapist. We have 21 special education teachers that are on the special education plan with FTEs, meaning they have caseloads and they are teaching sections. So those are broken into 6 at the elementary, 7 at the middle, 8 at the high. We have 2 speech and language pathologists of our own. And then on the next slide, you'll see a line for a speech and language pathologist because we do have a part-time person from the CAIU that takes the spillover caseloads and service times that our 2 just legally cannot have per state code for their caseload FTEs.
Are all our positions filled right now?
They are not. We have it posted. We want people to apply. But no, we are not at full capacity.
Okay.
So the CIU services, we are those unique ones, right? So teacher of students with visual impairments, the certified orientation and mobility specialist, the teacher of students with hearing impairments, physical therapist. We do have a part-time speech, like I said, and then what's called direct instruction, and that could be a temporary reason why a student might need to get a teacher to go into the home, or that instruction conducted in the home, previously mentioned, would be budgeted under direct instruction when we get there. Personnel development. So we have to outline in our plan. We're going to continue professional learning opportunities for autism, positive behavior support, paraprofessionals, transitions, science of literacy, parent training, and IEP development. So we do have a plan for all of those, and those are written in there. And yeah, I think we're good with our professional learning opportunities in that area. And obviously, of those ones that we can tailor towards the educational environment learning for our staff, so that we're making sure we're getting all of that pieces addressed, we're going to. But yeah. Any questions on the SPED plan? And sorry.
Yeah, I had a question. I don't know that it was addressed in this plan. Can you just briefly tell us what we do for child find in our district at each building?
Yes. So that depends obviously on the student. So a lot of times, an assistant principal or a principal or a counselor will get an outside report from a mental health entity. They send that over to us. We make sure that there's anything in there that we need to respond to, and we respond to that appropriately. Students that are referred to crisis from us, and then following whatever happens out of that referral, sometimes they do go to a placement and they come back with recommendations. Sometimes they don't, but we respond accordingly, because that's probably a triggering, right? That something is going on that we need to respond to with service, because we responded in a referral. We have the MTSS process at the elementary school, so if students are not progressing where that team would feel the student should be progressing, they will bring them up at the student services meeting, and we'll discuss that we feel an evaluation is appropriate. We had the student services meetings at the other two buildings as well, and any concerns from the counselors or the principals that their day-to-day interactions triggered. Oddly, this year, Dr. Fox and I went on a couple walkthroughs, and I went back and I was like, we need to look into this student. So, it just kind of comes up organically and as things come up, but we definitely always respond to the paperwork that families would give us if they do provide that. And
when you did kindergarten registration, how many kids that are receiving early intervention already did we have? And were those numbers already included in what you showed us today?
No, early intervention students are technically not ours yet. There's only a few that have registered completely. So we've had the early intervention transition meetings, and we are at about 23 students coming out of early intervention for next year. Yes, that's a sixth of the students.
And they're in the number that you showed us?
They are not in that number. So that number was from December 1, 5 months ago. And we're even higher than that. I mean, we're probably, with the early intervention kids coming in for next school year, now summer there's a lot of change with movement, but let's just pretend the numbers stay the same from now until August, plus those EI kids all register. There are chances that they won't. We might be closer to 360.
So were they included in your budgeting for next year, though?
Well, EI is not per se included in the budget, because you don't know about those kids at the time we're drafting our budget. if that makes sense.
We don't have an indication of what their needs may be.
Right.
And we won't know until they come into school. Sometimes we get reports, of course, from EI, which is helpful for us to program, but until sometimes they're in that regular education environment, we're able to get eyes on the student, get some feedback, apply some different strategies, and see what those needs of those students may be.
And I mean, nine of those early intervention kids are
Yeah.
students with speech and language impairment. So those kids are getting service here. You know, we're not talking about a huge service cost to those students. There's probably just a handful of those total EI group that would be a higher cost in service, but based on our preliminary interactions with the IU team, you know, Dr. Lurfink and I and some of the other team members attended transition meetings, we don't anticipate having a placement for any student out of EI other than in our own building. So now that's all to be determined on IEP meetings coming up in the next few months, but we wouldn't anticipate that to happen because we feel we have the capacity to support, you know, the students coming out, which is a good thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Herman. We appreciate it. Thank you for your work on this. And thank you to all of the teachers, parents, and community members who served on the Special Education Comprehensive Plan. And it's exactly what it is a plan, right? And that plan evolves. Now the action steps go into play. After it's formally approved, adjustments are made, and it gives us kind of a direction to continue to work for and work towards. So I'm excited about the next presentation. We have Mr. Black and Mr. Ward, who are going to talk to us a little bit about some transitions and changes that they've worked together in harmony with teachers and members of the middle school community to propose a middle school master schedule review for next school year. Mr. Black, Mr. Ward, thank you.
Yep, I'll get started. Christine, you can just go to the third slide real quick, and then we can go backwards. So if you look there at the schedule this year, we have 9 periods in it. So for next year, we're proposing the 7-period schedule. So what's changing? So at the end of the day this year, right now, we have like a 20-minute period. It's called a flex, and not much gets done in that period besides, you know, that's when students pack up, use the restroom before they go home. So the goal for next year is that 7th period for 5th and 6th grade. If you can see that on the bottom, it's going to be a flex period for 5th and 6th. And then 7th and 8th will just have a full schedule going down through with the flex in the middle of the day. So what's really changing? So the major changes are here with 5th and 6th grade. So right now, 5th and 6th graders have a double period of math and ELA. What that means is if I have 2 math teachers in 5th grade, they can only teach 4 classes, which gives them, with 180 kids, that's a pretty high class size, right? Because our 5th grade class is 178 right now. So the goal is to reduce those class sizes and allow the teachers to teach more classes throughout the day. So that will reduce the minutes in math to 47 minutes. As opposed to this year, we have 2 43-minute periods. So the thought for the teachers are, how are we going to cover all the standards in math? But as I talked to Dr. Fox and some of the teachers, is it really about covering all the standards? We're making sure our kids get that foundation of mathematics as we go up through. Because if you look at our progress the last few years in the state testing scores, it's not showing any gains there like we would want to see. So the thought process behind this, and me talking with the teachers, is if I'm in math for 47 minutes, I'll probably be more focused and engaged than I am in there for 86 minutes and just kind of, and it's kind of thing I think where we see some more of the behavioral issues, like that 2nd period of math, where I've been in there for 60 minutes, I haven't moved, I'm kind of sitting here listening to math for 60 minutes in a row. So to cut down on that, the behavioral issues there too, and also get that more engaged time for students in those periods. This will also help with what Dr. Herman was saying, whereas we have some students that are in, let's say, special education, math, and ELA. So that takes them already, they're out of the 80, they're below the 80% time because they're in that math and the ELA. And in addition to that, so we're not just going to say, oh, we're just going to throw those kids into a regular ed classroom. Next year, we're going to have co-taught classes for all 4 grade levels. So there'll be a regular education teacher in there doing the direct instruction with a special ed teacher helping out, moving around, doing some of the direct instruction, helping those kids out with their, so they'll be in there with regular education kids as well. And the goal of that, like I said, we have some kids that aren't ready for just regular ed on their own. They don't need to be in that least restricted environment. They need a little help, but they can be out with the regular ed kids, so that will help them kind of transition. Hopefully then we can get them to out in the regular ed and get them out and help them grow out of their IEP. So if you can look at my notes, that smaller class sizes, specifically for 5th and 6th, that's who it really changes the most, because right now, in 5th and 6th, they do specials, and they do like a rotation of 6. So it's 30 days, 30 days, 30 days, 30 days. So if you have 181 kids divided by 6, there's 30 kids in a tech ed class. There's 30 kids in an art class. It's kind of hard to do it. So with next year, what we're going to do is the specials are going to go to a full marking period, 45 days, and there'll be a group 8 sections for 6th grade to limit that class size, like a tech ed class or a FACS class. 5th grade, they'll have 6 sections because they're a lower class, and then 7th and 8th, they have more core class they have to take, so we'll mix them in there where we have the teachers and with the PE and the social studies. The teachers then, like I said, for the good news for the teachers is, and I know we have the IXL data, so if you look up there, the process for change, Dr. Fox has asked me, how do the teachers use that? And then the key for us next year is going to be to use that to determine what each of our classes need. So if my students go to standard 2.548, my class has already mastered that, there's no need for me to cover that. So in that class, maybe I'm not going to teach that lesson for 3 weeks. I'm just going to do a 1-week overview and move on. So we have to use that information to help us out as well. Like I said, 47-minute periods for 5th and 6th grade. I think the good thing is, at the end of the day, most of the students are going to have a flex. So flexible instruction. So my goal for that is the teachers to take the kids that they may need a little extra help in math. Let's put them all in the same classroom and let's get them some help. If I need help in ELA, I go to the ELA teacher, and so on and so forth. In 5th and 6th, because they're coming from the elementary, that I think how many teachers, Rebecca? 1 teacher they have in the elementary, or 2? 2 teachers. So 5th and 6th, we're trying to keep that same thing where 5th grade, we're trying to keep it as groups of 2. 6th grade, they might have 2, maybe 3 teachers. And because then when they go to 7th and 8th, they have all different teachers just rotating around. So the biggest change there is going to be for our 5th and 6th graders. And the goal is and the hope is, was talking to the teachers, that we'll have more student engagement in that 47-minute period than we do in the 86-minute. Because I was talking to Dr. Fox, we have that 86-minute period, and sometimes students still have homework. So that's a lot of math for a 5th and 6th grade. And I was a math teacher, and I love math, and that's still a lot for me. So that was kind of the thought process behind that. The 4th and last page there, so this is kind of something I stole from my last school. They call it a Panther Day. I was going to call it a Black Hawk Day. So there's multiple uses for this. So my main goal eventually is, when I was in middle school here at Susquenita, we had activity periods at the end of the day, like different clubs, like maybe chess clubs, stuff like that. So the main goal at some point is to get them back into the middle school schedule. Maybe, and I'm thinking like every Friday we do that, and kind of have the teachers then could get some team time and have some specialists cover their classes. Because our teachers want team time, but I can't give them all the same prep, because with substitutes and all that, we'd be in a world of trouble if everybody had the same prep in each grade. Because if 2 5th grade teachers would call off, then I don't have teachers to cover. So that's the reasoning behind that. Also with those activity periods, I feel like I have some students that could benefit for some like mentorship, maybe from some of the high school kids if we have them come down. Like say if we have a group of athletes, and maybe the football quarterback could come down and mentor them a little bit, and just speak to them like what it's like, the behaviors should be like, and the leadership of when you get up to the high school, and just kind of help them grow in that way. And like I said, we met with teachers. Obviously, 5th and 6th, their main thing was how can we keep them with two groups, and we're going to do our best to do that. 6th grade's the next year's 6th grade's kind of an anomaly with 179 kids. That's 50 more than any other class we have, so that's 2 more sections and another teacher that we have that's going to rotate up there with 6th grade next year as well. It doesn't really, 7th and 8th isn't affected that much. The only thing that affects is they had like a every other day extra math period that they won't have next year, but they'll also have that flex in the middle of the day where if they need some instruction, we can get them that. And it also opens up, I think, our special ed teachers to help out in the regular ed classroom and help our least restrictive environment. And I'm hoping our P-by-S that we're implementing helps special ed as well, and helps us in the middle school with a more structured way to react to different disciplines and what we're looking for. So the P-by-S team, just to go off course a little bit, has met 7 times now, so we have 1 more meeting before the end of the school year. And we've talked about the behavior you want to see in the classroom, the bathroom, the gym, recess, lunchroom, iPads. So that's a big one, really, iPad usage and what should be on our iPads, what shouldn't be on our iPads, and stuff like that. So that's the whole reason behind it. So we're really only losing a period, because that, like in the middle of the day right now in the middle school, 5th and 6th period, lunch is included in there and the flex is in there, so we're not really losing as much as it looks like on the paper. We're only losing about a period or so of instructional time, and we just have to do a better job of using that IXL diagnostic information on what each class needs, and we're not going to group our kids obviously in 5th and 6th, but we want to make sure if this group's really good at this, that we don't need to be on the same page of the same book for every classroom.
Thank you. When we talk IXL is a diagnostic program. The use of it isn't to drive instruction, but to guide and inform, and it's one piece of data point. Another data point, of course, is attendance. Another data point is the tickets out the door, the exit strategies that are used and employed time and time again as an instructional strategy. It's that summative daily assessment that's gauged and used by a teacher to know where their student is at for that particular lesson or the lesson essential question and objective for the day, and then measure it, of course, at the completion of that, and then again by the end of that particular unit. So it's an exciting piece to use, an engaging piece where they can use as a team to look at it as one data point across time to use to help guide and inform instruction. I really like the idea of the co-taught classroom, a really proper co-taught, and it'll take some time to build. There will be some things to work out, of course, but it is a relationship. And a good co-taught classroom really is difficult. Let's just say Dr. Jones and I are co-teaching together, and if I'm the special education teacher and he's a regular ed teacher, a good co-taught classroom, sometimes you don't know who's the teacher. You know, we're both teachers, and we both can split, and he may be an expert in X, and I may be an expert in Y, and we can bounce ideas off of each other. And it really is great. And some of my best experiences have been in a co-taught environment and watching, and I'm excited to see that direction. And I'm excited for the teachers in the middle school and their willingness to dive into co-teaching, and it's exciting.
I think on top of what Dr. Fox said, there's regular ed students in the classroom that may be a little bit better at math, let's say, than another student can help them, because sometimes you learn better from one of your peers instead of listening to the teacher jargon. The peer jargon kind of helps you out. And also for, going back to Dr. Herman's stuff about special ed, we have each the grade level special ed teacher will have what's called a progress monitoring period in the middle of the day or at the end when the students have the flex, which they're checking individually with their caseload students and see where they're at, and are they ready to go to a co-top maybe? Are they ready to go graduate out of that? So that's another thing we built into the schedule, that it doesn't have to take place by taking them out of a regular class to get that done.
Do our students have social studies every day?
So right now in the middle school, 7th and 8th grade does. 5th and 6th is every other day, but next year they're going to have it for a semester, and the next semester will be a PE, so they don't have social studies every day.
We can't fit it in?
That would probably take some work on the teachers to get some more curriculum and stuff. I don't know if that's something that would be doable over the summer. I can definitely look into that, but that might require more personnel too, because of making it, because then it's not 2 periods they can teach, it's just 1.
Is that a personnel problem, or is that a room on the schedule problem, or both?
I think the personnel problem would be the bigger issue, because you need another, I think we have 8 sections of it. So if you take 4 away, you need another half a teacher maybe. It'll be something I can definitely look into, but
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's something we can definitely look. I don't know if it's necessarily a personnel, but currently right now it's an every other day. So at this particular point, it is an equitable distribution between what's happening in this current schedule and what would be happening next year. So your ask is, can they get it daily? To me, when I look at social studies as well, it could be an integration as well into English language arts. It works well into that when you integrate the two of them, and you begin to have that daily interaction between the two. It does feed well into that particular content area as well.
Initially, 5th and 6th grade had 9 math periods every 6 days, social studies every day. 8 years or so ago, we wanted to increase math instruction, so we bumped math twice, 2 periods a day, often split throughout the day, and then social studies was every other day with the phys ed opposite, so they had phys ed every other day for the course of the year.
so it was a semester and semester.
So there were 6 teachers back then per section. And then the schedule that they were using this year, with the large 5th grade class, we added a person, and we went to 2-person teams and a 3-person team for 7 sections. And then their specials were split across, 5th and 6th grade specials were split across 3 periods. In the middle, we combined. So
Okay.
Well, and I think the reality of it is the state, in their wisdom, is assessing math and language arts. They're only assessing science once. Don't they, 8th grade? Okay, so twice. So that's the reality. The state's not assessing social studies. Pardon me?
When they redid PSSAs and they changed ELA to math, science sort of just stayed the same. So that's been the only thing to really compare them through. And they're all reading this.
Yeah. And they're never going to assess social studies because it'd be a political bomb.
Civics, maybe.
Yeah.
I know they talk
Civics,
about
maybe,
it. But
yeah.
Now there is there is a civics exam that we have to give yearly, and that civics exam is not a requirement for graduation, but we report the aggregate data to the Commonwealth each year in a survey that we have to provide. And the civics exam mirrors data of the citizenship exam, and it's given in grade 8, I believe, at the middle school. Is that accurate?
We always did it in 7th with Mr. Marcus. He used it as his pre-test, beginning of the year, and his post-test. And it was the U.S. citizenship test, and we used that data when Mr. Marcus was here for that stuff.
Well, if we could keep that in mind to take a look at it, if there's any way we could extend it to every day, I think that'd be a good idea.
Is civics part of social studies, or is it
Yes.
something different? It should be.
Did have a quick question about math. I'm sure you know the answer. Since we're theoretically losing instructional time, so is that going to change the curriculum, or are they going to just have less time for practice within the classroom? What's that going to look like?
Yeah, so like Dr. Fox said, that's where we have to use the different data points to figure out what each class needs specifically. So if my first period class is good at order of operations, I'm not going to spend 5 days, 6 days on it when I know they already have that down, so I'm going to move on to the next section. So it's just figuring out what works for that class. And then at the end of the day, we'll have that flex period where whatever we think we might be missing, we can also get those kids into math instruction in there or ELA if we need it.
Well, I was more thinking of from a continuity of education standpoint, whether or not we would still cover first grade, the amount of content, so that second grade knew that the students coming in would have, that they would have been exposed to this content, or how that would look curriculum-wise.
Yeah, and I think that certainly speaks to the larger conversation that we've been having, and need to kind of take a step back and look at the continuity flow. And I think the power in a lot of that is not necessarily what's on paper at all times, because what's on paper drastically changes in accordance to the needs of the students, attendance of students, things that happen throughout the school year. But I think it's getting our teachers together into that vertical and horizontal alignment and discussions. So our first grade meeting with second grade meeting with third, fourth meeting with fifth, et cetera, and having those conversations like you said, where did you end? Where are some of your students strong at? Sharing that data from a conversation point of view, then we know where we can left off and where we can go. And then it's using a tool, a diagnostic tool, to begin to adjust. Because I think, as Mr. Black said so well, it's looking at it, okay, well, if I'm really good in, 90% of my class is really good in order of operations, I can focus and do some of my station rotation or small group instruction with this group of students and give them a little extra here, and begin not to just say, I'm going to assign everybody the same, but I'm going to give you this section to work on. And then I'm going to move on with instruction, and then be able to give some specialized and more specific instruction to those students. So I don't think it's a matter of loss as much as it is being a little bit more targeted. And we're never going to cover everything. That is absolutely true. We don't cover, we teach. And we don't teach curriculum, we teach students. And I think there's a big difference between that. And I think our teachers do a great job of that. And they continue to. They meet the needs of the kids where they're at, and we're going to grow our students. And I think that's the most important thing. PVAS growth to me, which is that data measurement of growth over time, is much more valuable than a stagnant assessment score that really becomes, pardon my language, stale and stagnant data by the time that you receive it, because we can't use it to adjust instruction. So yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but good work that we can build around the momentum that's happening at the middle and then use that to tier off at the high and at the elementary school. So it's exciting work.
No, and I think philosophically what you just said makes perfect sense. I know in the past here, we've had reams and reams and reams of papers stuck on walls and everywhere else that we checked off boxes to prove that we taught something. Not necessarily that anyone learned it, but that we satisfied someone's expectation. And I think that is not the right way to go. So philosophically, I think what you said, it's about communication, it's about individualization. So thank you.
I hate to do this, but I'm lost from the beginning. Because you said, at one point you said 86-minute class, and I can't make that mathematically work in any of these classes.
Well, that was this year. So this
That's
year
the bottom one, correct?
No. This year, that's the bottom ones for if I want to get those activity periods back into the middle school. So this year, the 86 was they had the double periods of math. And
In the
double
future,
periods.
can we compare stuff?
Yep.
Thank you.
If I may, I'd like to ask one question. One of the biggest things that parents really like is the high school algebra 1 and geometry and section. The kids can learn high school credit because it's the same class. And I know that high school in the last several years sort of went back to that period and a half for algebra 1, if I'm correct. Because we had to match up credits, so is that still in consideration how it's going to affect credit?
Yeah, they'll still be up the credits that are taken out for one at the middle school, correct?
But just when they say work at the same time and all that, credit.
It'll match up. We're basically, yeah, they're still going to have enough to get the credit for middle school.
One question. You're talking about classes, this class knows this, so this class won't be taught that, or, already knew it, so they won't for the next year. But does that mean every student in the class knows this? Or will somebody get left a little behind?
No, the diagnosis will show you how much, so let's say 95% of my class knows this, so they're not going to get left behind because they're still going to teach it, but it's just not going to be as much time spent on it in that class.
Okay, so the 5% will catch up.
They'll be still taught it, so then there's that flex period at the end of the day for 5th and 6th, so if they need to have remediation still, the teacher would pull them aside and say, hey, let's work on the order of operations, let's work on this, let's work on that.
Okay, great.
Well, that's the other nice thing, co-teaching, when you have two teachers in the class, because then you have a teacher that can pull the student aside who did not get it and can work with them, because they were a co-teacher in the class who helped prepare the lesson and teach the lesson so they understand the content. So you have twice the adults per student to help for the students who aren't on.
Like you said, if I feel like this schedule, we do it next year and it's an ultimate failure, we'll have to make adjustments. So it's all about making adjustments, because right now we have that 86-minute period, in which I can send you a schedule maybe to D for you, Mr. Lehman, and you can see the schedule they had this year kind of paired up next. So that was my fault. I apologize for that. But
Current classes aren't 43 minutes.
they'll be 47 minutes.
No, your current ones.
No, the current ones are 43, correct. So this year,
But there's 8 of them or 9 of them?
so it's quick to help me out. So there's 4 of them to start the day, but 43 minutes. Then 5th and 6th are like a lunch and a flex, so they're kind of a little wonky. And 7th and 8th is 43 minutes, and 9th period is a 20-minute flex that is just there at the end of the day.
It's English and math have double periods. The
Right,
other
for
the
5th
other-
and 6th graders.
The other periods are normally like 43 minutes.
Right.
So it's only English and math that they have the 86-minute or whatever period.
Right.
The other periods are 43-ish. So he's getting rid of those extra long English and math classes and making them normal length. I don't know if that helps.
But there's 9 of them, or there's 7 of them, or there's 8 of them, because now you got an hour at the end. That's the part that there's, like, these don't even match up with 47 minutes if you go the whole way down through.
You're looking at the second schedule. So the second
I understand.
schedule would be something where if we want to try to get activities and clubs back into the middle school, like that's just something we were talking about as a middle school team. So the main schedule is that first one. This one's just if we Because when I went to the middle school, they had their clubs, and the teachers were saying how they like to have those clubs in there, and they wanted to have some maybe team planning time. And the only way you can fit team planning time and clubs in is kind of adjust the schedule every once in a while.
So I like the idea, if you could send me the current schedule, and what I'll do is then I will put those two together, and we'll have that side by side look at between what is currently, what is proposed for next school year. And again, I like the idea. We can make tweaks as we go, and not doing anything, you know, kind of, you see some needs and some feedback. And the nice thing is, you've got the expertise also of Mr. Quigley, who's able to give some feedback back and forth. And he's lived several ideations of the schedule back and forth. And every year, yep, there's a transition that occurs in and out. And it's just finding what syncs. And I love the idea of the involvement that you both had of involving the teachers in the feedback process, which is important as well, to get that buy-in, that understanding, and the why. And this has been a process that started November? Yeah.
The teachers and just getting their input and feedback on some of the, I guess, downtime, maybe we would say.
So thank you. And we'll send that out to everybody, those comparisons. Thanks. Any other questions for Mr. Block or Mr. Ward at this time? All right, we're going to transition into, and not certainly to spend a tremendous amount of time, but just to continue with our process. Again, with the preliminary final budget, I just want to go over just a final kind of caucus meeting overview at this particular time. And I'm not going to go into a tremendous amount of time. I appreciate all the time you spent working and asking tremendous questions pertaining to the fiscal year 23 as we continue to plan out. And, you know, again, I always like to start with the goals, right? What's the overall goals as we continue with our particular budget? And the goals continue to enhance and maintain our current curriculum offerings for all students. And we mentioned that this evening was a good example of that when we look at our middle school and we look certainly at special education. Those are curriculum offerings that we need to have for all students and be able to meet the needs of all learners. We continue to maintain and enhance our current facilities, and we work to provide a budget that is financially responsible within our district and to all stakeholders at large. Information to date, again, our Commonwealth of Pennsylvania budget is not finalized. We are not expecting, I believe, the Senate to be back in the session until May 24th, is my understanding. That's correct. And we don't believe to hear anything at that until at least that particular time. We continue to review our fund balance and any financial trends, and we continue our budget to actual to see where we end up this current fiscal year. Thank you for attending and being a part of our April 20th special budget workshop meeting. We're going to continue with looking at preliminary final approval at the May board meeting, and this budget will be available there for public review for 28 days with final consideration and approval in June in accordance to the PA School Code. Budget process steps to date. I continue to talk about our fixed drivers, salaries and benefits, health care, PSERS as it continues to go up to 35.2%. Special education services, as Dr. Herman did a great job of presenting this evening, and the unfair funding formula associated with cyber charter. We continue to review our maintenance plan at caucus and look at the needs and prioritize. And it's important to note that those needs can change on a dime based upon what happens within buildings. I know personally at home, right, something could break and something could be damaged, and before you know it, it has a significant cost associated with it. Taking 3 large buildings as well as ancillary buildings on campus, that could lead itself to transition as well. We passed and submitted Act 1 resolution not to a tax above the index at 4.6%. We approved our final audit for fiscal year 21 at our March meeting, and we analyzed and provide options for reduction in the overall budget deficit. And fiscal year 23's budget is about 1.9%, a total increase from fiscal year 22. Current expenditures, looking at all the object codes, has not changed. It is $35,992,157 with revenue coming in at $34,102,857. Here's the budget comparisons by object code from fiscal year 22. To the left, you'll see the gray bar. and the, I'm going to call that a brownish orange, bar to the right under salaries, benefits, and professional services, you'll see a decrease, maintenance, and a slight increase in some of those categories overall. It's important to note the district millage rate, and this will be important as we look at May 10th and we look at we're a two-county district. Millage rates are subject to change every year regardless of any tax increase. And it's important to note, and I'll say that, in our proposed budget, there is 0 tax increase. But we're a multi-county school district that operates both in Perry and Dauphin counties, and we're required each year to rebalance our millage rate using an approved baseline method, a method that we get from STEB or the State Equalization Board. Multi-county districts are sensitive to both assessed value and market values, which get provided to us from both Perry and Dauphin counties several times before they're finalized here coming up in our May 10th meeting. There will always be a change, and I emphasize that, and you'll see this. There will always be a change based on market value increases. As one rate changes in one county, the other changes as well. Current budget for April of 2022 hasn't changed since our April 20th, 2022 special budget meeting. We are looking at a deficit of $1.889643 million, or roughly $1.9 million if you want to round up based upon that number. Excuse me. We continually analyze our items and forecasting anticipated increases with expenditures. And I think that's the key to this budget. It's tough to get actuals. This is a forecast at this particular time. And as things become more and more actual, we begin to kind of hone that in and begin to really land that plane. It is important to note that this plan does not include a tax increase using the Act 1 index at all. The planning for this budget includes flatline basic ed subsidy and IDEA funding from 21-22. It doesn't anticipate any increases of that. That would be positive news if the Commonwealth would give us any increase in basic ed subsidy or IDEA funding. That would be wonderful and would help offset some of that deficit. We will need to apply fund balance to balance our fiscal year 23 budget. Internal controls, again, we talk about this time and time again, and we did a little bit at our April 20th special meeting. We continue to look at open positions, and we do that confidentially, and we look at any open position to have a discussion if that open position at this time needs to be filled. What is the implication on the current structure? What the current master schedule? What's the implication on the impact on students, and what's the impact on curriculum? And if that position doesn't need to be filled at this particular time, then it's not. And I think that's important to know that it's not just rubber stamped, that we take a look at it and we make sure that it's appropriately needed at this particular time for it, rather than just say, well, we've always had it, so we're going to continue with it. We look at a vendor contract review. Anytime we get a contract from a vendor, we ask what's the scope of work, is it the best price, and we do our best in due diligence to ensure that we're getting the best and most fairest price possible. And that's important. We look at competitive pricing, multiple different vendors, and we also look at cooperative pricing. And if we see a cooperative pricing, we also then compare it to other prices as well to ensure that that is the best particular pricing at the time that we're provided. And we also, one thing that I've touted Mr. Howell about and will continue is that element of preventive maintenance too. And that's going to be imperative as we continue to ensure that we get capacity in our custodial staff, because preventive maintenance is extremely important. Our next steps then, we're looking to pass a balanced budget, and to do that we'll utilize fund balance to offset the deficit. We're looking to do that on our May preliminary final budget approval, and it will sit for 28 days with final approval at our June board meeting. And I said it would be a quick overview, and I wanted to promise and honor that, so I'll take any questions at this time. All right, at this time, we will take any public comment that may have came through. And we'll take a look at that. I will exit this for a minute. And we'll just pause for 1 minute while we look to see if there's any public comments on anything, and any public comments from anybody in attendance. And no public comments at this time. So if there's no other points to be made, I look forward to seeing everybody Tuesday. And thank you for your attendance. And it is 8:30, and we are adjourned.